Today, we're getting under the hood of perimenopause with Laura, the founder of Peri, a digital wellness platform dedicated to supporting women through perimenopause with evidence-based guidance and holistic resources. How old were you when your perimenopause began?
That is a bit of a tricky situation because I have three small children. The youngest one is 1 year old. So I had them when I was 35, 37, and then 40. And it's really a blurry scenario for me. Like, is it still postpartum or perimenopause? What I can say is that after my first child, um, my whole, hormonal state really changed. My sleep changed, my anxiety levels changed, and that really never went back to normal. Now I don't even really know what normal is anymore, to be honest. But it's really like this, this blurry phase of you're in your late 30s, you might have small children, your body changes, especially your um, emotional state changes, like your anxiety, your irritability, your stress levels, all of that is coming together. And that blur zone is really what I would describe as my my beginning of perimenopause slash postpartum, but it's still, I'm in this phase where I think many women, I know many of my friends are in. It's like, something is changing, what's happening, but it's really hard to pinpoint it and understand, what is kind of what is driving what.
What has your perimenopause journey been like?
Perimenopause journey has been both good and bad. It is a confusing journey. It is, you see that you see what impact hormones can have on how you feel, especially on how your you know um your level of stress, and again, like I was saying before, anxiety, how that can change. So it has been really a mixed bag. I did find it very empowering in the sense of just finding a whole new view on women's health. It made me pretty angry at times that there is such a romantic view on everything surrounding fertility in women's health. And then we're kind of, all the years after, there has been so little education and focus and support that really make me mad. But I think there's room for all of us to really now be the advocates of our times, especially millennials like myself. And we are all, getting into this phase now and really demand answers and demand a better system. So the journey has been confusing, but I really grew out of it, trying to, and I love, the word sisterhood, really to create that sisterhood in my closest, surroundings, and just advocate for it and tell others about it. Because if you know more about it, if you speak more about it, then it's just less of an isolating experience for others.
What were some unexpected symptoms or experiences you encountered during perimenopause?
It's definitely the emotional part of it. It is definitely the rise of anxiety. That's it for me. And we hear that a lot in our peri community as well, in our safe space for women in perimenopause. It is that the emotional experiences are often much more manifesting that you're in perimenopause than the physical ones. So it's very subtle. Of course, you have the irregular periods, and for some as well, the body changes, weight changes, and that's all very real. But the subtle changes of being more anxious, being more irritable, having less bandwidth for things, that's how it manifested for me, and that's how it was surprising for me. And that's also something we really want to make sure in our community space to educate on, because that is sometimes which you really can't pinpoint. Those are the symptoms you can really pinpoint, and they make it so vague for many and so frustrating because you cannot really, name what is driving the change of your entire mental and emotional well-being.
How did this make you feel?
Just like other stages in our lives, and I would count fertility, if you're seeking to become pregnant, pregnancy, postpartum, but then also perimenopause to it, it makes you feel like you're the only one who's experiencing it. You, although this is a collective experience and so many women and people are going through it, those are moments in our lives, and perimenopause is by far the biggest one, where you think you are, the only one who is experiencing these changes, and frankly thinking you're going crazy because it just feels like an out-of-body experience. And that's how it was for me. It's like, what's happening? What is happening to my body? What is happening to, how I used to feel? And am I the only one who's going through that? And that level of isolation can be very frustrating.
How did you navigate the emotional changes and mood swings associated with it?
At the beginning, I didn't navigate it really because it is overwhelming. What helped me is really seeking an open dialogue and kind of taking the shame out of the experience and having a conversation with others, with friends, but also with my mother. Not necessarily with healthcare practitioners, because there's always like this level of, am I being dismissed here? Am I being taken seriously here? But really finding your inner crowd of who you find, just a comfort in expressing what you're feeling without even having a proper diagnosis, but just, expressing it. Because already talking about it and having somebody nod and just say, I experiencing something similar, that helps in taking the edges out of the emotions a bit, and just normalizing it for yourself, and again normalizing it in a conversation. And that helped a lot. I also journaled quite a bit, just to kind of see what the day brought, like what is making me feel good, what is making me feel bad, and just kind of having that in front of you and having that documentation of your moods, that helped at the beginning tremendously. I didn't really have the perfect recipe back then of addressing that with my healthcare practitioner, just because, I was also still in this, or I'm still in this, having small children and not really being able to pinpoint it. I did mention it, but I back then, I don't think I had the perfect way of approaching it. But now, of having been longer in the space and talking to more about, especially more practitioners of what they say is helpful, I do think I have like a good recipe to recommend to others, and which is really to list your top 3 symptoms, or list the top 3 things, which are bothering you, because time is so limited at our kind of annual exams, and we want to make sure we just bring across what are the top 3 things which are bothering, or which are just impacting our lives. Come with questions, with specific questions on what are my options for treatment, what you recommend in terms of birth control or hormone therapy. So just make a list with, again, 3 questions which are helpful. That level of actionability, many practitioners told me, just helps to guide the conversation. That doesn't mean that the conversation will be great, because some practitioners are less open to it than others. And then I would always say, it is okay to break up with your practitioner, because we do have maybe positive experiences with our OB-GYNs throughout pregnancy, for example, but that doesn't mean that that doctor is the best companion in the perimenopause journey. So it's always good to, if you don't feel right, to find somebody else who can help you with it. So come with your questions, come with your top 3 symptoms. If the conversation doesn't work out and you feel dismissed, then ask somebody else if you can. And something else which one person once told me, which I find so helpful, is bring somebody with you to the appointment. If you feel very overwhelmed and emotional about the conversation, it's good to have a parent, a partner, a sister, a brother, maybe a child sit there together with you and have that conversation, because then you have 4 ears listening to it, and it's easier then to make an action plan afterwards.
Did you encounter any misconceptions about perimenopause from others, and how did you address them?
The biggest misconception about perimenopause is the age when it can start, which is, we think that menopause is something which happens to you when you're, end 50s or 60, whatever. Like it has a wrong rep in terms of age. Perimenopause is 10 years, on average, 7 to 10 years before the moment of menopause. And the moment of menopause is, your final period for 12 months. It's very normal that, and the average age of that moment in the US is 51, 52. So it's very normal that first symptoms start in your early 40s. And there is not enough information around that, especially on the healthcare side, to really educate patients saying, hey, it's normal if you experience weird symptoms happening in your late 30s or early 40s. So that's really something which I am now very vocal about with whoever I speak with, friends, colleagues, to say, hey, even if you're 36, 37, it's not about scaring you, but just about, being aware that this can come soon, which is not the worst thing in the world, but you just need to know that it's happening to you. I have some friends who are like late 30s and they're like, oh, Laura, please don't tell me about this because I still want to have kids, which is also a misconception because you still can get pregnant. It's not about, not being able to conceive anymore, but it can go hand in hand. You can be in perimenopause, you can, become pregnant. So I think this gray zone of late 30s to early 40s, that's the biggest misconception in this whole conversation.
What resources or support networks did you find helpful during your perimenopausal journey?
First, for me, friends and family, just to get that support system at home, really, and speak to your loved ones about, be transparent, just to be open about what you're experiencing, what you're going through. Um, I do find online communities helpful, either if you're, you know, actively contributing to a conversation or just listening in. When I started this journey, there weren't many safe spaces really out there. You did have Facebook groups, but that's, a bit, you don't want to talk about these very intimate symptoms in the same platform where you see your uncle posting fishing pictures. And that's led us to create Peri, which is really a safe space app for perimenopause conversations and community. And that was something I was looking for, to really have that, safe space feeling of it. And that's where communities can be very helpful, just to, have that validation from others and know that you're not alone and that you're not going crazy. And then really books. I think that there are great books out there. There are great authors out there, medical ones, but also personal stories, which, can be just a great set of tools of understanding your symptoms, because that's really half the price, to understand what are you going through, how do you name your symptoms, and again, how do you prepare a conversation with the healthcare practitioners, where many of these books are just great in, building your own action plan, really.
What changes, if any, did you make to your diet, exercise, or self-care routine to manage your perimenopause symptoms?
Diet, I would lie now if I would say I did many changes, because I still, I'm not the biggest protein eater, which I should be, but I'm not. But I know that there is, their guidance on, especially as of 40, you should up level your protein intake. What I really did do is completely changed my way of how I view workouts. I do a lot of weight training. Weight training back then, we always thought makes you bulky, or it's something which is not for women, which is ridiculous. So that's really something where I get my strength from, where I get my mental clarity from, and frankly also where I prevent future bone loss and injuries. So weight training has become really my focus of exercise and well-being. And then it sounds easier than it is, because I have small children, but really trying to get more sleep in, really taking sleep seriously, because sleep, the better you sleep, the better you feel, and the better, the healthier you really are. I don't have the golden nugget of how to do that. I just try to, go to bed earlier, no devices, really limit phone usage in the house. But these are really my two cornerstones of feeling better, which is weight training, sleep. I still work a lot, so there's not, not that much limit in stress, but those two those two pillars really have helped me feel better. And weight training is just, if you have anybody talk about it, it's just a must for anybody, men, women, but really, especially women, because we have disregarded weight training so much in these last years. It's really important for us.
Were there any positive or empowering aspects of your perimenopause journey that surprised you?
Definitely. I'm not sure if it's perimenopause or just a part of getting older, but that you just care less about other people. I think that's a very, very interesting, and very beneficial thing. I think you just start laser focusing on yourself, on your family, and on the things that matter, and all that other stuff you used to be busy with, you're definitely not. So that for me is the biggest win out of all of this, which helps me focus on my family, on my work, and it just makes you much more laser focused on the things that matter.
What top 5 tips would you give to other women?
The top 5 tips I would give for other women is, especially if you're listening to this in your beginning 30s, just start thinking about this conversation and this topic. I know it's unsexy and you don't want to talk about perimenopause and menopause when you're 30 or 31, but it's important just to know what it is, how you feel, when it can happen. Really, this anticipating knowledge can, move mountains because you are more prepared of what's happening. So to anybody who's listening to this, either if you're already in it or before, just start educating yourself around it. Have a conversation with your practitioner proactively, even if you don't have symptoms yet, and definitely if you have symptoms. Don't be shy and demand answers. And I was mentioning before a bit on, how to prepare yourself. Really note down what you want to ask, what you want to have solutions for, because the reality is that many healthcare practitioners are not super fluent in perimenopause. So you need to, start guiding that conversation a bit more. Take, pay attention to your health. We talked about weight training before. We talked about nutrition, which is important, which I still have to level up my game. Sleep. I definitely have a new relationship to alcohol as well, just, because alcohol makes me feel worse than it did before, but just also because we're learning now so much of what bad impact alcohol has in our bodies, even one glass. And I don't want to scare anybody, and you should still enjoy your life, but that's just something I learned for myself on, how to how to view those things which we in our 20s and 30s just took like as a given. Open up the conversations. That's so number one was the learn early, number two, the healthcare practitioner, number three, lifestyle choices, and number four is talk to others about it, create that awareness for others and learn from others. Perimenopause is not a stigmatized conversation anymore. You should have, you should have the conversations. You should ask others about it. You should share your stories because that helps others to really, navigate for themselves as well. So this conversation deserves more attention and more openness. And then number 5 would be, set yourself new boundaries. I think as we're navigating our changes in life, at work, again, we talked before about this, giving less um, giving less attention to what other people say or do. I think, having this hyper focus, establishing your boundaries of what's good for you, what's not, is just very, very important anytime in our lives, but especially in the face of perimenopause.